Welcome in to the CHGO Best Damn Chicago Bears Podcast you will ever find. We are slightly apologetic today that we're a second late or 18 minutes, but that is the way that life works. And we are super proud to be presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app, use the promo code CHGO when you sign up. Now, we have royalty on the show today out of The Ohio State University, a Chicago Bear through and through, a man that I've got stories on that I can't wait to talk about. Greg Braggs' personal friend, Doug Plank, joining the show today. Doug, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate you coming on CHGO Bears.
No, thank you so much. Always enjoyed being here. It's great talking to you guys.
Yes, and for those of you who are watching on the YouTube, Doug might be slightly delayed, so what I recommend is just you use this as an amazing audio podcast, unless you want to stare at Greg Braggs, because he looks Braggs. You look very intimidating today, buddy. You look like you're trying to dial up your Doug Plank.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to have you on, Doug. I always tell people you're one of the best storytellers for Bears fans that didn't get the chance, or the graciousness to watch you play. And, I've interviewed you before, and you taught me a lot about the Bears of before my time. And I think anybody that's tuning in right now that is a younger Bears fan is going to appreciate some of the things and the stories that you bring. I'd certainly like to start it with, I think a lot of people know you for, being a part of Buddy Ryan's 4-6 defense. And for those that don't know, in the chat, maybe tell the story about how Buddy Ryan came up with that name of the defense and why you are forever attached to that.
When I got to Chicago in 1975, same year Walter Payton did, I was on a draft group that maybe there were seven guys in that year that made the team and not started, but maybe 6 of us started. And so it just goes to show you where we were at that stage of it. And, Jack Pardee was a really a blood and guts coach. He just wanted to see everybody get smash mouth, physical, play very aggressive constantly. But it was very simple concept on offense and defense. And then in 1978, Jack Pardee left to become the head coach of the then Washington Redskins. And they brought down 2 coaches from Minnesota, the head coach, Neil Armstrong, and the defense coordinator coach, Buddy Ryan. And Buddy came down and said, he looked at me at free safety, which I had led the team in tackles. If your free safety is leading your team in tackles, you got a problem. It means those runners, those receivers are running downfield, picking up yards. They gained 10 yards by the time I ever got to them. So he just said, he came up with this defense one day. We all walked in a meeting room and he had all these numbers. Buddy Ryan was not an X and O's guy. He was a numbers guy. You weren't even a name. You were an adjective if you weren't a good player, or you were a number. If you were a number, you wore that number in the meetings with pride versus SOB or DA, put all the italics you want on whatever he had called. He had names for everybody. And some of them were so discouraging, especially young players. When Mike Singletary came in, I thought Mike was going to have a psychiatric breakdown because, he just couldn't deal with Buddy Ryan. Buddy was just, one word answers. And there was none of this coaching stuff like, hey, come over here, son. I'm going to go out in the field and I'm going to teach you how to do all this technique. No, if you didn't know how to do it on your own, you were a dumb donkey. You can term that any way you want. And he just call you out right in the meetings. You dumb donkey, when are you going to learn this system? And he took me, he said, I'm not a free safety. I said, well, what am I? He goes, you're a middle linebacker. So he put me up there right behind the line of scrimmage. And then he had 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. Gary Fensick became the free safety. We still had 2 corners out there. And someone said, what are you going to call this, Buddy? and he circled my number like 3 times and said, "We're going to call this the 46 defense." Now you can imagine now this was before the 46 defense had even played one play, so nobody was overly zealous. Oh my gosh, that's going to be a great defense. That's going to take us to the Super Bowl. We hadn't even been anywhere near the Super Bowl. You weren't even allowed to mention Super Bowl at the Chicago Bears facility because that was something you were never going to get to. And finally, buddy, this whole thing just kept getting bigger and better, and they started making better draft choices with the Bears, replacing players that were either older or compromised in their physical skills. And, I never made it to the Super Bowl. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, Doug, how's the Super Bowl? I don't know. I watched it on television with the rest of you guys. How was it? I wasn't there. And but the 46 defense, it was not about a passive defense. It was about put your boy pants on. Let's go do some work, and we're going to go get the quarterback. That's the whole scheme of the 46 defense. Destroy the quarterback. We want to find out who the backup is, because the backup, just like what happened to the 49ers, is not going to win championship games. And so every play we had was go get the quarterback. In fact, when one guy intercepted the ball, he was on his own. What do you think the other 10 guys were supposed to do? Go get the quarterback. And when you watch this on film, it didn't take for long for quarterbacks around the league to see this. And as soon as they threw an interception, they didn't care what happened on the field. They were running for their bench, and they were trying to dive out of bounds just so 10 guys didn't jump on top of them and hit them. And so anyway, that's my 4th year. The 46 defense came into existence, and we mixed that in with all of our other type defenses. And our offense started getting better and better and better, even with the great Walter Payton. And we became the 85 Bears. The Bears became it, and I think it was truly one of the best teams ever. Jim McMahon as a quarterback who really didn't care. He wasn't going to listen to anybody. He didn't care about Mike Ditka, what his instructions were. When Jim McMahon got out of the field, if he wanted to throw a bomb, he was going to throw a bomb to Willie Go. And if anybody would watch that Thursday night game against the Minnesota Vikings up there, and Jim McMahon was on the sideline for some injury, I don't know what it was. And then they decided, they were falling behind in the game, so they brought Jim in. The first 3 passes he threw were touchdowns.
Yep. Hey,
all you need to know about Jim McMahon.
Yeah. I want to talk McMahon with you. I want to talk Ditka with you. I want to talk Walter with you. But I also want to ask you about a story that I heard, Doug. Now, I don't know. Would you say that you were? I don't know if I say you were slightly crazy on the field, would you say that's a fair description?
Yeah, you know what it is? I mentally trained myself not to be afraid. Suppress your survival instinct. We all have an instinct to survive. If someone came in for a gun right now in your room here and pointed at you, you would do something. You're not going to just freeze up. You're going to duck under the desk, or you're going to maybe try to attack the guy. Well, I trained myself that when I was approaching another body, usually bigger than me, I would never slow down. I would just keep going until the point of impact. And most people that I meet now, they go, "You're no NFL player. You're not even that big. You're 5'10". Well, I know I've lost 2 inches through joint replacement, knees, shoulders. After a while, gravity starts having an effect on a body. It shrinks you down towards the ground. That's where I'm at. But I convinced myself, throughout that game, no matter where I was not going to slow down at anybody. And maybe I was going to get wiped out. I had a lot of concussions throughout my career. I kind of learned that skill at Ohio State. Nobody really understands this. I only played 5 games at Ohio State. My junior year, I played 0 games. Is that amazing? 0 games. Three games my senior year, because the kid in front of me, Tim Fox, an all-pro player, a safety for the Patriots. He went to the Raiders, or the San Diego Chargers, and I think he played some for the Rams maybe. But, he could run like a 4.5, 4.4. I couldn't run a 4.4. One thing I could run, though, I could run a 4.7 at full speed into another person, full speed. I never slowed down. And, you look at all these people out here today that are running 4.4s and jumping 36 inches or whatever. you know what? A lot of those guys in their mind, they don't have that ability just to go, I'm going to be a cruise missile and I'm going to make impact on somebody at full speed. I don't care if you're only going 18 or 20 miles an hour, you're going to do some damage.
I got two questions on you on that, but I want to hit this story because you mentioned Ohio State, and you had a teammate at Ohio State in Brian Bashnagel, who was also he was a teammate of yours of the Bears. Now I heard a story here, Doug. Not going to out who told me this one, but apparently you guys were having some practice in the offseason, light practice. I think in like a indoor facility, and you're supposed to be playing. You're not hitting fully, and I think you know the story I'm talking about. And here comes Bashnagel making a catch, and you cracked him into the cement ground that you were, it wasn't grass. This was indoor, terrible. And you apparently, according to my source here, you said to him, "Oh, I'm sorry, Bash, didn't know it was you." And then about 5 plays later, you cracked him again, right back into that cement. You're like, that time I did know it was you.
Listen, I'll tell you, here's the reason for it. My first day at Ohio State, the morning we had to run 2-mile test in 12 minutes. So that meant you could run 1 mile in 6 minutes, but you had to run the second mile in 6 minutes. That's hard to do as a football player because we had helmets on and shoulder pads. We didn't have a full equipment on, but we had shoulder pads and a helmet, had to run around a track, those tracks around football fields, a quarter mile. We had to run around that 8 times. That was 2 miles. We had to do it in 12 minutes. So that was the worst part. Then we go over to the stadium, and now we just have these helmets on, helmets and nothing else, shorts, T-shirts, whatever. And those freshmen, the practice just started ramping up. It was supposed to be a walkthrough practice. There's a point to this, what I'm telling you. After 10 to 15 minutes, we were playing tackle football on the AstroTurf with a helmet and nothing else on. 11 guys on both sides because everybody was trying to be a man, He-Man, chauvinistic, whatever you want to call it. Somebody came up at the time they made me a running back because I was a quarterback in high school and a defensive back. So they didn't have enough guys to carry the ball. So I'm running, carrying the ball. One guy comes up to me, a safety. I'm not even looking. This is supposed to be a walkthrough practice, which means you walk through, you just learn the plays. No, this turned into full speed. So now I got the ball and I run through the line and I'm not thinking it's still not, nobody got tackled. This guy tackled me, hit me on the side of my right knee, tore 2 ligaments, the ACL and MCL. Now that surgery back in the 70s, you were 50-50 at best. You were ever going to come back on this field.
Wow.
And I got treated like, when someone said I got hurt, I'll never forget, I'm laying on the ground and one of the coaches walks over to me and he goes, "What town did you come from, Doug?" And I said, "Irwin, Pennsylvania, in a suburb of Pittsburgh." He goes, "What do you think the people would think of you right now? You haven't been here 30 minutes and now you're laying on the ground saying you're hurt." You know what? Tears rolled down my face. I became Doug Plank that first day at Ohio State. Whatever there was, I don't care, walk through, T-shirts, we could be naked out there. I'm going to take your head off. And I'm never going to have another walkthrough practice in my life. And everybody on the other team knew it. Brian Bashnagel and everybody else. I don't care what it was. We could have went out there with nothing on. I'm good. You're going to get my best. I'm coming at you full speed, and we'll see what happens.
Didn't you get I heard some other story around that time, Doug, where I think you got hurt. And maybe this is the same thing, but not like fully putting it all together here. But you got hurt and you saw that oh, now I'm hurt. And all these buddies of mine that were my best friends, they no longer are because I don't have the same juice that I once had because I can't play football because now I'm dinged up. And then there's some level of, all right, screw all of you. Clearly, this is not show business. This is not friends business. This is show business, and I'm gonna do what I got to do to survive.
You know what's funny about it? So the first day I'm there, I'm hurt. Okay, so I have surgery, and when I knew I was seriously hurt, I didn't get it. I didn't get operated on right away because someone diagnosed it as tendonitis. I don't even know what tendonitis was. It sounds like arthritis, something minor. Nobody knew that I had torn these ligaments and, and the cartilage in my knee. And for 2 weeks, I went over to practice and I kept trying to practice. I would tape up my knee. I had like 5 rolls of tape on my knee. My knee was like a cast. I could barely run. Now you can imagine me out there, because all of a sudden, all I've seen is trainers. I haven't seen a doctor at all. So after 2 weeks, I get hurt again on the same knee. How you can't play without ligaments in your knee. So they go back in there and they go, well, we're going to have you see the orthopedic doctor today. He walks in, he takes one look. I'm on that medical table. He looks at my knee and he grabs the bottom of where the ankle's at and he moves it. Well, the knee is just, you can move it any way you want to move it because there's no structure there. It's broke. He goes, Doug, I need your parents' phone number. I'm sitting on this medical table. I go, why do you need my parents' phone number? Because I'm thinking he's going to call my parents and say, come and get this piece of you-know-what and take them back home because he ain't going to do anybody any good here. He goes, well, I need their permission to operate on you tomorrow. I got emotional. I'm like, oh my God, there is something wrong with me. It is not in my mind. I didn't just imagine this. I'm in Ohio State where all these All-Americans and everything else are. Now all of a sudden, how much value does an injured safety have who never has shown anybody he did anything of any value? So after that surgery, and I came back, I got to be the strongest player on the team doing leg extensions and contractions and all that. You know why? Because I had a purpose. The next spring in spring football in college, somebody was going down. I could not wait for those first 30 practices to show everybody, you know what? I don't have half go. There's no walkthrough. I became a warrior, and it got me on special teams. But I think I was so crazy in practice. I think some of the coaches just feared putting me in the game because, I was more concerned with wiping people out than even executing plays.
Oh, well, Dan Hampton once told me that I asked him who was the hardest hit he ever took in the NFL. And he said, Doug Plank at practice. And he, without hesitation, he said, it got to a point where we had to tell him, like, knock it off, Doug.
We're the only defensive linemen that had bruises in their back of their legs.
How were you able to see the quarterback when Hamp was in front of you? I mean, I'm sure all you could see was his big ass. Like, I mean, that's a large man in front of you there, Doug.
You know what? Honestly, Dan, he was such a great player for us and a warrior and a personality. I mean, he was so much fun to be around. He had great stories, and he just said, Doug, please don't hit me in the back of the legs. Can you? Here's what happens though. When you're running at a target, now he doesn't even know I'm coming. And he's all of a sudden throws somebody to the side. And maybe he himself gets thrown the equal and opposite direction. Because I always try to hit gaps. Well, at the last second, a lot of times our own linemen would fill those gaps. And I would just smack right in their back of their buttocks, legs, knees. I tried to stop it. How do you run full speed and stop within like a foot or two? You can't do it. We called it friendly fire. And it was just one of the realities. And I got Gary Fencing to play like that too. I mean, he was a receiver at Yale. I mean, come on. Then he turns into the, a seeking, a cruise missile for the Chicago Bears after coming out of being a receiver at Yale. Doesn't happen.
It's wild.
We need to get you in the locker room, Doug, so we can talk to some of these guys playing for the Bears right now. Because, every time I talk to you, I want to run through a brick wall. So when you fast forward now to what's going on with the Bears, I would love to hear your perspective on the announcement of the new president of the Chicago Bears. It's that doesn't happen that often here with this organization, that big of a change. What was your impression? You being part of the organization, being in the industry and understanding everything that comes with it. What were your impressions by that hiring?
You know what? I talked to a couple of people from Ohio State that had known him back when he was with the Big Ten in some capacity. They all had huge respect for him. I heard several of his interviews. I'm not saying you can tell a lot from an interview, but you can tell a lot from an interview. And I really think he's going to make a significant difference on this team. And I think, just listening to his interviews, I think he says all the right words. I think, there was the gentleman he replaced had been there a long, long, long time. This isn't one of those long time jobs in any capacity, whether you're, president or a player or, right on down the line. I mean, this is a very, fluid type of situation where, there's only, out of all those teams, only one can be crowned Super Bowl champion. And the rest of them, I don't want to say are losers, but they're literally losers. I've been in a lot of, not missing off the Super Bowl, but in a lot of other capacities, whether it was Rose Bowl games or other things like that. Even though you feel like you've had success and you've got to some point at the end of the year where even like in the playoffs and you lose. I mean, I just talked to several people from 49er organization. Those guys were discouraged. They had a great year though. It doesn't matter. If you don't get to the top and win, then you're not a loser, but you didn't get it done. I mean, let's face it. And and so I had to rearrange. I almost knew before our season ever began, with the group of people that we had, we were not going to go to the Super Bowl. We were not going to win the Super Bowl. So I'm thinking, what else can I do to have a really enjoyable fall and go out there for 16 weeks and just blast people and have fun? And I did it. I mean, honestly, I would never want to tell anybody this. There were some games I came in and Gary Fensick and I were high-fiving each other because we wiped out their whole receiving core. Their running backs were limping off the field at the end of the game. We had succeeded in our mission.
Well, I mean, how much did you get to watch Bears games this year? Because it was a tough year for Bears fans. They went 3-14. Mark can attest to this. He was in the locker room, and these guys did play together. Go ahead, Mark.
And Doug, just hang on before you answer that, and we'll get to Doug's watching the Bears this year. But I just want to remind everybody, and Doug, they're loving you in the chat, so keep it coming. When they love our audience is loving your stories. They're also loving Game Time, the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever to score the best deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows. Dreamed of sitting at the 50-yard line back in the day to see Doug playing kill somebody at Soldier Field. That would have been awesome. Or courtside at perhaps a Bulls game tomorrow night. Portland's in town behind home plate when baseball comes around. Game Time has got you covered. You will not find a better deal. Remember this, no better deal on the internet in the secondary market than Game Time tickets. And if you love CHGO, you're going to love Game Time. Best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link in the description. Join the over 15 million people who downloaded the Game Time app. Score the best seats to all your favorite events. Bragsy.
That's right. The stage is set, and we're counting down to the battle in Arizona. There's no better way to get ready for the NFL action than with DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 57. New customers can bet just $5 and get 200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take a shot at an even bigger payout with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. Boost your Super Bowl 57 winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. And download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code CHGO. New customers can bet $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get 200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code CHGO. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void in Ohio. See show notes for details.
So let's get to that question that Braggs asked her, Doug. Watching this year's team, 3 wins, number 1 overall pick. Bears fans were celebrating the tank. Your good friend Greg Braggs was jumping up and down. He was literally humping our inflatable bear when the Bears lost. I'm guessing you were not doing the same.
No, it's hard to watch your team lose, in any capacity. And, I watched Justin a lot at Ohio State. I mean, every chance I could get, watching the game, not live, but, replays and things like that. And, I just thought he had a great college career. And, that first game, I got really disappointed, when he had all those sacks. All those sacks happened to him. I mean, he's still a very athletic, young, fast, quick, accelerating. How does a quarterback like that get eight sacks? I think it was 8 sacks, his first start. And there has to be some participation with that. What do I mean by that? That means that the offensive line is letting some guys through. Whether they want to do it, let them through or not, it's happening. He's not back there by himself. And so it's not a simple solution like, oh, let's just change quarterbacks. Well, how are you going to find another quarterback that's as elusive as he is? Watching him this year, a couple games, he not only outran all the defensive linemen, he outran all the linebackers, safeties, corners. That one game, he had an incredible, I think when he set the record, he was outrunning the whole secondary. I've never seen a quarterback do that. I was down in Atlanta coaching when Michael Vick was there. Michael was bigger, stronger, more well put together than Justin was. But, sooner or later, when you're an active quarterback and you're running down through the secondary, sometimes you don't see, people coming at you from blind angles, either taking your legs out, hitting you in the side of the head. And I think that's ultimately what happens. Even Michael Vick, it just slowly degraded his ability to run and be very elusive, as his career went on. You add those injuries up over and over and over again. A human being is no different than a car. You got to change the tires and change the oil and all that sort of thing. Yep. And, unfortunately in body parts, you don't have any extra ones. You got to just deal with what you've got. And, but it does. And if it's even just a fraction of a second slower than what you were before, that's what this games are won on now, just fractions of seconds. And I think watching football right now, the people that are controlling the National Football League have made decisions over the decades that we want this to be high scoring, the ball getting thrown in the air all the time. I mean, you think about it. When Walter Payton came in, I mean, it was run. Maybe a screenplay or something on third down. That was it. We didn't throw the ball down the field. Or if we did, it was no more than like 10 yards. But now if your team is successful, you've got to be able to have a deep threat, a quarterback that can function back in the pocket and be very elusive also, be able to run out of the pocket, all those sort of things. And it really has radically changed the game.
Could you have played in today's game?
No. Yeah. Simple. No. Let me just say this. I could have walked onto the field, but probably the first couple times I ran into somebody, that was it. Goodbye, you're out. There was one time down in Tampa, I came up, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't really like Tampa very much. Jimmy Giles was their tight end, and he was a big guy, 6'6", like 260 pounds. Man, you hit him, it's like hitting a trailer. But what? I still knocked him on his back. Buddy Ryan said, I had broken ribs the week before we played Tampa Bay on a Monday night game. And so I didn't practice all week. You can't practice with broken ribs. If you sneeze or cough or anything like that, oh my gosh, excruciating pain. How do you get away from pain? It's called a shot. They didn't have the tent back then. So before the game and at halftime, you got shot. You got not shot with a gun, you got shot with a needle. Yep. And you couldn't feel much. I mean, I remember and they had some needles, not like we see at your family doctor. These look like horse needles. It looked like a glass. The glass was containing it wasn't like a little tube like you see it in the doctors. This was like something you would drink out of. Yep. All that was going into your body. Oh. And when that was in your body, you couldn't feel anything. So even if you had broken ribs, you couldn't feel anything, because that's what eventually ended up happening. I hit Jimmy Giles on a Monday night game, got fined, and but I had broken ribs and a whole bunch of stuff like that. But my point is, the game is so much more offensively oriented now and designed. So please don't hit the quarterback. Please don't hit receivers. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences.
I did the Bears post game show with Dan Hampton and Ed O'Bradovich for 7 years, Doug, and OB would tell me stories.
You know the stories.
Yeah. I mean, well, he would tell me stories in the 60s. They'd be flying in the back of the plane, and he would sit in the back of the plane with Butkus, and he couldn't lift his shoulders like ever. So before the game shot up, and then after the game on the flight, they'd just come back there with that huge, whatever you just called it, horse needle. And that was just standard operating procedure.
It was.
And it takes a huge toll in your lifetime, but here you are sitting today. It doesn't sound like you would give up playing in the NFL. Like most of you guys wouldn't, because you loved it so much.
You know what? This sounds kind of crazy, but the camaraderie was like beyond anything. I compare it to almost like the Army. Were people dying out there? Well, not really, but some came close, and you were really responsible for each other's health. And what do I mean by that? Well, those guys who were up in front of you, like Dan Hampton, which everybody did a great job, like Dan, wiping out all the blockers. Dan was like one of those guys. If I can't get to the running back, I'm taking all these blockers with me, and they're going down to the ground. That's a sacrifice that he made, just knowing that guys like me and Fensick or whatever, Mike Singletary, were going to be downfield. We were going to be there to make the tackles and follow up. And it's that camaraderie that you just don't. I mean, I can see those guys like today, and it all comes rushing back. Like, do you remember this? You remember the great thing that happened in this game or whatever? And everybody remembers it. I mean, it's like something you will never ever forget. And so I think that you just take that for what it is, and you're so thankful that you even had a chance to even do it for just a few years, to even get that experience of like what total dedication to each other feels like.
Doug, when you talk about this year's team and how you talked on your experience of being on some bad teams, but walking off the field being proud of what you did personally, this defense specifically with this year's team had a rough go of it. The defensive line only had 10 sacks, which was an all-time record or franchise low in Chicago Bears history. But there were some bright spots, and I'm interested to hear your perspective on a guy like Jack Sanborn, who came in after Roquan was traded. And he kind of plays in a lot of ways like you're describing.
Yeah, he did, honestly. I loved watching him play. I mean, you know what? He was even as a coach, as I later became a coach in the NFL, the guys that you always see around the ball, that's not natural. A lot of times when plays would go away from me, you had a choice as a player. Just sit where you're at or just dog it, maybe jog over there. Or you could be a maniac and you could take off like your life depended on it. Like you were in an ambulance and you had to get to the hospital. You only had 3 minutes to live. That's the kind of mentality you had to have. You every play you had to think, I'm going to be the last line of defense. That guy is not going to get past me. So whatever happens, wherever he goes, I'm going to go run him down, a receiver, a running back or whatever. And you have to have that mentality all game long. And it's hard to maintain it because it's hard to have that much energy and focus and willingness because when you're going to meet up with him, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a crash. And a lot of guys just say, no, I've had too many crashes. I'm all crashed out. I don't want to go hit that guy anymore. No, I want to hit everybody. I remember at the end of games when we were losing, Gary Fensick and I were trying to clean up on every receiver, every running back. And they would, like, after a play, they go, what are you guys doing? Why are you hitting me? You're losing. The game is over. I go, no, our game, Gary and I have our own little game going. Our game is who can get the most tackles, who can get the most interceptions. I said, we're still playing our game. I don't care about you guys. Well, they'd walk away shaking their head.
I
remember getting flagged sometimes, penalized, not for hitting anybody. I ran over there thinking there was a pile over there starting to form. And I run over there and at the last second, I don't want to hit my player, so I start flying over the pile. Well, if the guy ever raised his head up like this, I would, catch him right in the face mask. but a lot of times I didn't hit anybody. All I did was fly over the pile because I couldn't hit anybody. And they would throw a penalty. The officials would throw a penalty flag. And I'd say, no. I go, I didn't even hit anybody. He goes, yes, but you had bad intentions. I'll never forget the guy telling me that down in Tampa. You had bad intentions. I go, yeah, you're right. I did have bad intentions. So,
you had great intentions. I totally agree. I had amazing intentions. I'll stop there.
No, I've always said Doug makes me look calm. And if anybody knows me, that speaks for itself. You have an unbelievable energy and passion still for this team. And I believe you could play safety tomorrow at your current age and still hold up. Speaking of the safety play, the secondary was somewhat of a bright spot for the Bears outside of Justin Fields. They really held their own even with a lack of pass rush. Maybe speaking specifically to the safety position, since you played it, Jaquan Brisker certainly was somebody that seems like an up and comer on this team.
No
second
doubt.
round
Yeah,
pick.
absolutely.
And when I looked at him, Doug, he's as big as a linebacker. He's huge.
Yeah. And I have to agree. I think the secondary play got better, but people don't understand too. Your line, defensive line, it dictates how good you are as a safety or a cornerback, because that like in those 80s, man, those guys were coming. You were running an internal clock in your mind. You know what? That quarterback is either going down or he's got to get rid of that ball now. And what happens is you could take chances. You could jump in front of receivers. You could do things, take angles that the quarterback wasn't going to be running out of the pocket. As that line breaks down, everything downfield looks so much worse. Long throws, touchdowns. You're not as free. You have to be, as a safety, they always say you're the deep is the deepest guy. So, you can't be super aggressive like I was, because, I used to look at linemen. Linemen are going to tell you run or pass every single time. And if they come across the line of scrimmage, then it's a run. And I'm taking off like a rocket ship, out of my stance. I don't care whatever they faking back in the backfield. They can't throw the ball because their guard or tackle is downfield. And there were times where I came up and they threw a pass, even with the lineman downfield. No, I would tackle that guy and I would yell for the official, look, I got lineman downfield. Sure enough, he'd grab the flag, throw the flag. You're not allowed to go downfield if you're a guard, a tackle, or a center. And the moment those guys did that, I was off and running to try to make a tackle or hit somebody at the line of scrimmage.
Doug, we're going to keep going here too, but we could do this all day long. I'm looking at the chat. Carm doesn't look like he wants to be here. Carm could sit here for 10 hours and listen to Doug tell stories. This is fantastic. We really appreciate the time. Doug Van Dorn in our chat here, Doug, has been asking, did Buddy Ryan ever admit that Perry was not a wasted draft pick? Now, of course, the fridge was there after you had left. Right. I don't know if you kept up with Buddy enough to know if you ever changed.
I did. Honestly, I did. I would usually call Buddy like every other week and, just talk to him about the game. And, I think he was still a funny guy. He was a Marine, or not a Marine, sorry, an Army sergeant in the Korean War. Buddy Ryan was a tough guy, and he expected toughness out of his players. And he would waste no time, no words were off the chart when he was watching film. You could be called literally anything. There was three favorite words, descriptive adjectives that you would never want to be heard from again if someone called you that. And if you got all three of those on one play, we called that the Triple Crown. And you know what? You're probably not going to start next week if you have a Triple Crown. We would talk about that or Buddy. Buddy didn't like guys laying on the turf. I'm thinking every time I got my butt knocked on the turf, I'm thinking this is going to be on Monday film session. Coach Ryan is going to look at this thing and say, why are you on the field so long? So after that, every time I got knocked down, I'm jumping to my feet like a magic man, like a magician. Or if I couldn't get to my feet, I'm crawling on the ground like this to get over there to the ball carrier, because he's going to be showing this to our entire defense the next week on Monday morning. and you better look like you care, that you want to get somebody down, you want to run into somebody, you want to tackle them. Buddy just, if you didn't know his language, when you were in there at meetings, trying to watch film of review of games, it was just all adjectives. It was adjective after adjective. I'm not going to tell you the adjectives, but we all knew what they were. Like I said, I don't think I ever heard a triple crown once on me, because if I made a mistake, I was crawling back to the huddle or something like that. I was on my feet as fast as I could. I learned with Buddy too, when you get knocked on your feet, you're flying through the air, someone blindsided you. You know what? You could be a gymnast. You learn how to tuck your head and you would roll. Actually, someone blast you off your feet and you body wise, you go into that knock off your feet like a somersault, and you're back on your feet like instantly. It's amazing. And I would practice it at practice. So, yeah, you can knock me down off my feet, but I'm not going down. I'm just going to roll and be on my feet running again.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it was one of those things, even when I coached in the NFL, how many players are around the final receiver or running back? That tells me something. That tells me this guy wants to play football. He is running everybody down just in case the guy gets up or there's a missed tackle. I always dreamed of, and it happened several times along the sidelines, a quarterback missed a tackle. Fortunately, someone like me or Gary Fensick went running over there thinking, hey, listen, we never knew it was going to be a missed tackle, but we were there to go ahead and follow up on the play, and save a touchdown.
Yeah. Who's also always there is one of our fine sponsors. Hang on here, Doug. Don't you go anywhere. We'll do one more segment with Doug. CHGO, proudly supported by Goose Island Beer Company, one of our great partners, Chicago's beer since 1988. You should have a beer and just listen to Doug tell the stories here. The beer roster, that's right. The Blackhawks Pale Ale, the Bull City 312, the Bourbon County Stout. I don't know what Braggs' favorite is. Actually, probably likes them all. Christmas IPA, Beer Hug IPA, Green Line, Matilda. Yeah, CTA. The Goose is available for you in whatever flavor you want. 2 locations are open and ready to welcome you. Grab a beer right now from their innovation tanks at the Goose Island Tap Room. That's at 1800 West Fulton, right by the United Center. Or you can go to the Clybourne Brew House, 1800 North Clybourne. Get a smash burger, fresh beer of the week. That's the original location, 1800 North Clybourne. For reservations and pickup, go to gooseisland.com/locations. Goose Island Beer Company.
Yeah, and I want to tell you about our guys over at ComEd. The ComEd Energy Efficiency Program is committed to helping families and businesses in the communities we serve manage energy usage and lower energy bills now and into the future. ComEd offers a wide array of incentives on lighting and other efficiency upgrades to commercial, industrial, and public sector customers of all sizes across our territory. Customers can inquire about how to upgrade outdated lighting to energy and money-saving efficient LED lights. Learn more about network lighting to operate your lights through your mobile device and track your facility's energy usage and more. Incentives have recently increased for indoor, outdoor lighting, and networked lighting controls, making these projects even more cost-effective than before. Visit ComEd.com/poweringbiz now to start saving money and energy. To start a project, contact ComEd at 1-855-433-2700. For more information, go to businessee@ComEd.com or public sector ee@ComEd.com. I did the EE for Lawrence there.
Doug's in on the E too.
He's in on the EE. Doug knows I'm an idiot. So Doug, when you talked about wanting to be around the football at the end of a play, have you ever been around Matt Eberflus? He was defensive coordinator in Indianapolis and now head coach with the Bears. That's his philosophy. It's the HITS philosophy where you finish every play and they grade that on a scale so they can hold the players accountable all season long to play through the whistle. and go after the football and be relentless like you talk about, but they try to implement it into a system philosophy. What are your observations of Matt Eberflus? Have you ever been around him?
You know what? I've never actually met him yet. I've had friends that you really just say nothing but good things about him. I think he's going to have a great impact on the Bears. I can't say enough about the Chicago Bears. I mean, we were not good when I first got there. We tried to get better, and I think that everybody inside that organization was really willing to try to go the extra mile or do whatever's necessary. But I just think sometimes you have to be lucky sometimes in football. The ball just has to bounce your way. You have to get that interception or fumble. The same thing is true for people. Sometimes even the most decorated people that are getting hired, come into jobs and thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to do great. Well, they didn't do great, and there was for some reason they failed. You don't realize this is more than just a vertical jump and how heavy somebody is or what they can bench press. It's about character. You have to have character to play in the National Football League. You have to have character to want to be around the ball every single play, not just one play. After I got hit and damaged at Ohio State, I was not a fun person to be around. When I walked on the field, it's like the switch is on. The electricity is up to 220 now. I'm hitting everything I can hit as many times as I can. And, then Buddy Ryan came in. Hey, if you get the interception, great. But the other 10 guys can go hit the quarterback. I mean, you talk about fun. We had fun. It was a fun time. Even during losses, Gary Fensing and I had fun because we already set up a set of standards that we were going to live by. Hustle, tackle, force fumbles, get interceptions, everything you can imagine. We are playing a game within a game. And I truly believe that's really how you have to be successful. You have to be able to say more than, hey, we want to beat the opponent. No, I want to take this guy out to lunch that's going to be across from me today and let him know, listen, this is not going to, I don't care whether we win or lose. I'm playing the same from start to finish.
Yep.
And
it's along those lines, like just enjoying the game. Jonathan Odden in the chat here, Doug, what was your favorite city team to play and what made it memorable?
Well, Detroit was one team we beat a lot, but you know what? They were a very, very physical team. That didn't mean they were going to win games. They just kind of like us for a while. The Chicago Bears, very, very physical, but they weren't going to win any games. You always had the best games, or memorable games like on a Monday night. Joe Namath's last game playing for the Rams on Monday night in Chicago.
Wow.
That night, I had 2 interceptions. I grew up with Joe Namath's poster in my bedroom because I was from Pennsylvania and I was a quarterback in high school. He was my guy. I mean, to get a chance to get an interception or even tackle him in the game, I'm like, I remember one time I tackled him. He kind of ran out of the pocket. I go, hi, Joe, how you doing? My name's Doug. I used to cheer for you when I was back in high school. This was during the game. He probably looked at me like, what the heck what are you talking about? This is like you get a chance to see your heroes during work, during the game. And then to get interceptions on top of it. And like I said, Monday night games were really special. I always thought, that you could play a little bit. There was just more energy. You could realize it that whole week. Just kept building and building. It's like Christmas coming. It's like, it's on its way, only a couple days away. And, that you knew that on Monday night, every other team in the country was watching your game. So you were putting on a show for all the other friends that you had at Ohio State, Chicago Bears. It didn't matter. And, so those were special.
That's just so old school because now, Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, it's just not the same. Yeah. But back then, Monday night was a huge, huge deal. Speaking of just putting on a show for your friends and all that. Not exactly the same, Doug, but they make a lot more money nowadays than they made back in your day. So, the lifestyle off the field is a whole lot different. Do you think that's impacted how much guys are willing to A, put their body on the lines, or B, how much, they actually care about playing for their teammates? I think a lot of people would push back on that, but I think from your side of the coin, you might think that it's a little bit different to what it once was.
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, obviously the finances for owners also. I mean, it wasn't just players, but the owners now are making more money than. I mean, there was actually a lot of NFL teams that were transacted during those periods of time. Where people were selling their teams, they couldn't make any money. So it wasn't always just the way it is right now. You can't lose and be an NFL owner. I mean, you're going to make money with all the other things now, especially gambling, opportunities and other forms of making money outside, the actual field of play, with charging tickets, things like that. The media rights now are so high. And, but I don't like to really try to talk about, is it different? Is it a different attitude? Well, I don't know. I think that, many of the salaries that players were making in the NFL back in the 60s and 70s were no different than anybody working for IBM or any other company out there in America. There was, you could very easily average, over like an 8 or 9 year career, $50,000 or $60,000. And, by the time your career was done, there was no taking off the, to the Bahamas or something like that. No, you were working. I remember every year, the last game of the year, 80% of our guys were all leaving after the game. They came packed. Their cars were packed because as soon as the game was over, there was no off-season training programs, nothing like that. Everybody just went home. So after your last game, you're saying goodbye to guys, and you're not going to see them again until like the next spring. Maybe for one practice, when they come back for one practice or something like that. It was just so different than it is now. I mean, it's more money, but it's a full-time occupation now. Players are there 12 months out of the year. Not like, you didn't see, once the season was over, everybody on the team usually would go back and work another job. That they needed another job just for employment. It just goes to show you, just how different things are. But, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because I think, it's just it's something that just happened to the entire NFL, ownership as well as players.
Well, speaking of ownership, Doug, the other big news that's been going on here in the last 12 months or 6 months is that the Bears are going to move to Arlington Heights potentially and build a new stadium.
No.
And Mark here does not want it. Mark wants them to stay at Soldier Field on the lakefront. Yes. In the open, no dome, in the open weather, or, I guess he'd be fine with the dome, but either way, we're picking nits. How do you feel about that news of the Bears moving to Arlington Heights, and what are your thoughts with everything with the potential move
I really think it's a sense of reality. All these are owners of teams, but they're really businessmen. And I don't think one person could say that any more than the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. I was a coach down there for the Atlanta Falcons for 4 years. And, their owner was a former founder with Home Depot. And so what happened was, when I first went down there, the Falcons were using another facility that they were playing at. It wasn't theirs. It was owned by the city. And you're severely handicapped when, Arthur Blank, looked at his situation and said, this is like, do you want to rent your house or do you want to own your house? I mean, it's as simple as that. Do you want to rent your stadium or do you want to own the stadium? Because then you have jurisdiction over it. It could be used 365 days a year. It could be a huge money maker, and also, an asset from an asset base, its capitalization is very, very high. It's how owners really can take their money from the football operations and put it into something that really is directly tied with how they operate. And would it be nice to have a Super Bowl in Chicago?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it would.
Yeah.
So I'm living out by Arlington Heights, I was very familiar with that horse track and all that. I just think its location for access and egress and ingress is great. I think that, you could build something that would even be something more magnificent than Soldier Field. As iconic as Soldier Field was down there on the lake. I mean, I'm glad I played there, for just all of the reasons. But, on the other hand, when you get down to purely business transaction, that would be a very smart idea for them to move forward and try to get that stadium built just as soon as they could, just like Arthur Blank did down in Florida with Mercedes Stadium, because it will result in huge financial gain.
Which is why, for the record, Doug, in my plan, we're going to sell that stadium land to the Bears, and the Bears are going to pay a lot of taxes back to the city, and they can own that stadium right there where they belong on the lakefront. Story for another time. Okay, I know it's a little bit of a pipe dream when I just laid out, but I'm still holding out hope. Okay, so as we wrap up here, we haven't talked to any Walter Payton, and you were talking about popping back up. I'm guessing there was at least one time in practice where you tried to hit Walter and you didn't pop back up, or he popped back up faster.
No, let me just say it. When you hit players should be guard. They should have numbers on them. How dense are these players? They shouldn't have like a 30 or 40 or number. No, Walter Payton was like steel, stainless steel. You hit him, you swore that you were just running into the side of a building like concrete. It didn't give. His density and his mind. Again, Walter was one of those people that could control his mind, and he could do so many things. He could run, he could catch, he could throw. But when he came to hit you, it was serious. It was deadly serious. And, he had incredible – I remember the first day he got there, we had like a universal machine, which is a weight machine in our facility. And there were some individual weights around there. But Walter Payton went around that entire universal machine on everything was maximum. And he did 10 of everything, like bench press, leg press, overhead press. I've never seen an exhibition like that. Whoever sold that machine should have had Walter Payton to go with it, because he went around that machine like in 3 minutes and was throwing weight around I've never seen anybody throw around. And his power, his explosiveness, you would think somebody like that would get injured all the time. He never got injured. I never saw the guy get injured. He was amazing. I was very blessed. When I first got there, they put everybody by alphabetical order in training camp. So Plank, Payton, hey, yes, I roomed with Walter Payton for the first year in training camp. I just learned a lot about him. He asked me one time, I'll never forget this. He goes, Doug, why do you think I didn't win the Heisman Trophy? Well, I played with the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner, Archie Griffin. I said, well, here's the difference. You went to Jackson State. Griffin went to Ohio State. I said, Walter, if you would have came to Ohio State, you would have been on national television all the time. I mean, this guy would have, I didn't know who Walter Payton was till I saw him down in training camp. And I was overwhelmed. You know what? You didn't need a pregame talk for Walter. Just say, Walter, there's the field. That's it. He'd go out there, man, he was a warrior. And I'm so very fortunate and glad to have played with Walter Payton.
I love it. Braggs, you got anything else? Because I'll ask one more
No, you fire away and Doug's always a phone call away, and maybe one day when you're in the city, you can grace the CHGO studios with your presence. And I know everybody at the studio.
I'd be glad to do it. Really, I didn't know I was allowed in there. No, I'm serious. You get into like
royalty is always allowed in the studios.
You are allowed. You are encouraged. We'll get you a key. You can come anytime. and you compare the way you talked about Joe Namath. We have a picture of you up right now from back in the day. I think you're better looking back then. Even now, Doug, but back then, I mean, look at those flowing locks, Braggs. You telling me Namath had nothing on Plank?
Namath had nothing on that.
0.0. Hey, first time, Doug, you met Jim McMahon when he walks in there. What'd you think?
I thought undisciplined, very outspoken. Jim had kind of like an odd look to his eyes. You didn't know whether he was looking at you or not. And, and I heard, I heard he liked to drink a lot. I mean, that's not my job. I grew up with a father that worked in a brewery in Pittsburgh, Duquesne Beer. And so we always had beer around the house. So that didn't bother me. But, I just think that he was something that we needed. He really was something that we needed. He was a little bit of an offset to Mike Ditka. I love Mike Ditka. I think without Mike coming to Chicago, the Bears do not go to the Super Bowl. He was the one that came in and breathed life into our offense and was leadership. And I'll never forget the first day we met, at a meeting, and he just said, "We're going to the Super Bowl." And there was a little chuckle in the room. He goes, "That's all right. Only half of you guys in this room are going to be going to the Super Bowl. The other half, you're going to be gone." And he goes, "And you don't deserve to be here anyway." Man, you talk about getting slapped in the face. That was it. Everything got real serious after that.
Yeah.
But that's what it took. I mean, everybody thinks it's just about one guy, getting you to the Super Bowl, one quarterback or whatever. But Jim, what made me love Jim McMahon was watching that Thursday night against the Vikings when, he came in as a reserve because he was injured the week before. And I think his first 3 passes were touchdowns. That's all you needed to say. And, those weren't the plays that Mike Ditka set in. I didn't know this until afterwards. Jim said, "Willie, go deep. I'm going to throw you, Willie, go. I'm going to throw you the ball." Now, that's not a call Mike made. Mike didn't make that. And he still, what could you do? 3 touchdowns? Hey, what are you doing calling your own plays?
Well, they worked.
Yeah, please call some more. We like it. And here's the other thing. The defense absolutely loved Jim McMahon. And I can't say that for many other quarterbacks that were on that team. We didn't like those guys because they didn't get us hardly any points. It was always, we got to keep the opponent from two touchdowns or less. Otherwise, we're going to lose this game. And he had an instant friendship on the defensive side of things because here's the other thing. Jim McMahon would die for a first down. What's that mean? Head to helmet contact. That means You're selling out to get the first down. I didn't see that from any other quarterback up to Jim that would do that. I mean, they just didn't do that.
Well, I think that the Bears right now have a quarterback that the whole team rallies around, and he ran a few people over last year too. So I think maybe with you, speaking on that, I think that just shows how the future is bright for a young Justin Fields here in Chicago. Doug, I really appreciate you coming on here today. Appreciate you working through some of the technical stuff, and we'll get you back and live and in color in studio one day down the road. really appreciate it.
No, I promise. If I'm there next time, I'm going to be looking you guys up. So don't lock the doors.
We won't in less than a minute, Doug. As we say goodbye, we just got a couple chats we didn't hit. How do you want the Bears to go about their offseason? Do you want them to use that 1 pick or trade it?
This sounds crazy. I think they could leverage that choice, and I would say trade it.
Yeah. Team trade. We're all.
Is that what you would call love it or list it?
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense too because it'll set you up for your future.
I think honestly, you're going to gain so much leverage from that choice. It will be ultimately much more greater rewards than you think any great person you could have chosen. I would negotiate with that.
Yeah. There's not that guy out there either. There's no Miles Garrett. There's no Peyton Manning going with it. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Hey, Doug, thanks again. Great stuff. Chat loved it. We loved it. And we look forward to having you in studio down the line. All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me on the show. Thank you.
And Braggs, just know this, buddy.
What'd I do?
You're my hero, pal. It's great to be with you today, buddy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. Lawrence, thanks for producing. I hope everybody enjoyed the chat with Doug Plank as much as we did. And judging by the chat, clearly you did. So thanks for watching CHGO Bears. We're back on Monday at noon Is that right? I think that's right. From the Super Bowl. We'll be out in Arizona all next week. That's right. There it is. February 6th to the 10th. Live shows from Arizona. Myself and Adam Hogue and Nicholas Moriano will all be out there.
And not Braggs and not Lawrence.
It's right. We that's next year. Hopefully, we're just going to bring everybody and then some. So, but everyone's going to be.
You can stay at Doug's house. Doug lives out there.
Yes, come on. Hey, I was going to say, come on down, guys.
It's going to be an awesome week. We'll have a ton of guests.
Do you got a pool, Doug? We can come.
I got a pool. I got it all. I got it all.
Right.
I got a great view to the mountains, cactus in my backyard. I got it all.
All right, I'm getting your number from Braggs, Doug, and I'll see you. I'll see you Monday for lunch. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching CHGO Bears. We appreciate you, and thanks again to Doug.